The Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare, was passed by our Congress and signed into law by the President in March of last year. Now, no other legislation has so electrified the American people because it clearly crosses multiple boundaries concerning the proper role of government. Let's take a look at Obamacare and what we can do about it.
The good things in Obamacare you can put down on one page or a page and a half. So what's on the other 2,598 some odd pages?
We're all going to pay an awful lot more, but we're going to get an awful lot less. Let's get rid of it.
It is going to destroy health care in America, and it's going to bankrupt our country.
Health insurance reform.
President Obama made reform of our health care system a top priority, and within 15 months of taking office, he succeeded in passing what is known as Obamacare. But critics wonder, is this reform or government takeover? Dr. Jerry Newcombe spoke with a number of experts, including Congressman Allen West, to find out.
Part of the point of Obamacare was to make health care accessible to more Americans. It seems as if that's not what's actually going to happen with Obamacare.
Yeah, it is not so much about making it more accessible to Americans. What they're really trying to do in the end game is to drive more people to a government plan, a single payer type of plan. There is a dishonest tyranny in the liberal progressive socialist agenda that comes down and says, you know, we are here because we care about you. We want what's best for you. But really what they want is the control of your life.
When did it start exactly? About a week ago.
Everyone would agree that one of the main points of reforming health care is to try and ensure that more people have access to affordable health care. But critics of Obamacare note that it's already beginning to have the opposite effect. Wendy Wright, president of Concerned Women for America.
While people may have access to health insurance, and even that's questionable, they may not have access to health care itself because doctors will flee the profession because of the regulation and costs to them under Obamacare. And the higher costs mean that the government will have to ration care that is available to people. So while the goal was given of we want to make sure that the uninsured have insurance, the problem is that even those who are insured will have less access to health care.
What we know is that the White House has essentially admitted that Obamacare is a failure. They have issued over 200 waivers, meaning exemptions to be in compliance with Obamacare. This is large universities, big labor unions, big businesses have all applied for waivers. Why? Because Obamacare has jacked up the costs for so many people that these companies couldn't go forward with offering health care unless they got an exemption. When you've got the president who is giving out exemptions and pardons to different groups and different businesses based on how well connected they are politically to the White House, that's not our American form of government. That's a denial of equal protection under the law, under our Constitution. That's one more reason why Obamacare has to be defeated.
There are additional biblical concerns, such as the funding of abortion, despite a flimsy promise not to. Father Frank Pavone of Priests for Life.
So what are your thoughts on Obamacare, especially when it comes to abortion?
Well, this has been one of the most disastrous pieces of legislation to pass because we see the American people deeply concerned about abortion funding. You know, even when you have people who say they're pro-choice, doesn't mean they want to pay for it. It means they think that other people should have the choice, but they don't want to pay for someone else's abortion.
According to a recent report, 46% of doctors in America say they will quit practicing medicine because of Obamacare.
If doctors and nurses and other healthcare providers are forced to participate in the killing of innocent children and the harming and maiming of women, then how can we have any assurance that doctors and other healthcare providers won't use their skills to harm other patients as well? But on top of that, there are doctors and others in the healthcare profession who are considering leaving because of Obamacare, not even because of conscience issues, but they have numerous other problems with Obamacare because of the bureaucracy, the rationing that they'll be forced to participate in.
One of the most questionable elements of Obamacare is that it forces nearly every American to buy insurance. But is that constitutional? Several state attorneys general have filed suit to block the law, and already a judge in Virginia has agreed, ruling this portion of Obamacare unconstitutional. U.S. Congressman Mike Pence of Indiana.
The fact that this is legislation that crosses a previously uncrossed constitutional line. It actually mandates that Americans purchase health insurance whether they want it or need it or not. And there's never been a point in American history where Americans have been essentially mandated to purchase goods and services by the federal government.
It's another government-centric approach that believes the government can make decisions about things that are very personal in our lives, a patient-doctor relationship, or how we care for the medical needs of our families. This needs to be done at the individual family level. Let employers continue to help and let communities be involved. But the federal government cannot run our health care system.
When you let 30 million new people come into the system, they aren't paying anything. There's no new doctors coming into the system. Something's got to give.
So what can be done about Obamacare, and does the new Congress in any way have a mandate to deal with it? U.S. Congresswoman Michele Bachmann of Minnesota.
Obamacare has its roots in government-directed and controlled socialism, because this has government essentially taking over and running and controlling 1/6 of the American economy and health care. We've seen the disaster that government-run health care has been in England and in Canada and other nations around the world. We don't want that for our citizens here in America, so we simply have to repeal Obamacare.
This Congress needs to deal with it as a priority issue, in fact, even as the #1 issue, because it needs to be dealt with before it gets fully in place. And they need to do it while there's still the momentum. It will show the voters that this Congress gets it. They get why they were elected. It was because of the excesses of this last Congress.
What's the best case scenario in terms of dealing with Obamacare?
The best case scenario, now this is what we have to do. The people's house is their voice. And the voice of the people is to repeal Obamacare. And that's what we have to do in the House of Representatives. We have to do that very early. So what we have to understand as we go into this 112th Congress is that the American people have awakened, and they're not going back to sleep.
I just think it's imperative that we scrap the bill and start over with health care reform that lowers the cost of health insurance without growing the size of government.
As we've just heard, the enactment of the health care legislation passed by the last Congress will be disastrous for America. Not only will the tax burden be enormous and the loss of our freedoms significant, but our own tax dollars will be used to end the lives of unborn babies. In addition to that, if unchanged, it will result in health care rationing for older Americans. This is not acceptable in America. This is not freedom. That's why we must act, and act now. We have designed an urgent citizens petition for you to send to your U.S. representative and senators right away, asking them to act on behalf of freedom by repealing this dangerous legislation. The petition also calls on Congress to lower taxes to protect human life and reduce the size of government. This petition demands that our newly elected leaders in Washington make good on their campaign promises. It sends the message that we're watching and we want action now. So please, call for your petition today. The toll-free number is on your screen.